In this video, we're going to explore the greatest common factor and least common multiple. Now, the greatest common factor, or GCF, is the greatest whole number that is a factor of all the given numbers. For example, what is the GCF of 20 and 30? First thing I'm going to do is list all the factors of 20 and 30. Now, if we look, we're looking for a common factor. I see I've got 1, 2, 5, and 10 in common, but we want the greatest, and the greatest is 10. So we say the GCF is 10. Now when we talk about the least common multiple, or LCM, we're talking about the smallest counting number that is a multiple of all the given numbers. So say, what is the least common multiple, or LCM, of 4 and 6? So we're going to start listing the multiples of each of those values. Multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, etc. We can go on and on. With 6, we've got 6, 12, 18, 24, etc., etc. And we can see that there's even multiples that are shared. We have 12 and 24, just to name two. And it could be many, many more. But we want the smallest one, or at least in this case, that is 12. So the LCM is 12. Now one way we can go about finding the GCF is to use what's called the slide method. In this, we're going to have one column that is going to be all of our divisors, and then all of our columns after that are going to be the numbers we're going to be using to find the GCF. We're going to find common factors and just continue to divide until we have nothing left to divide but 1. And then we'll multiply all of our divisors together to create the GCF. So say we have the numbers 224 and 144. I can't tell you the GCF off the top of my head, but I can go through and factor and see what I come up with. So I know that I can divide both of them by 2. 224 divided by 2 is 112. 144 divided by 2 is 72. Now I could divide them again by 2, but I also know those numbers are divisible by 4. And that gives me 28 and 18. Again, I can divide 28 and 18 by 2, and that gives me 14 and 9. Now look, do they have common factors? No. There's nothing else that can be divided both into 14 and 9. So these are all the factors I was able to use. So I'll multiply all of my divisors together to create my GCF, which is 16. Now, I can use the same method for the LCM. The one small difference is that I'll take both the first column, my divisors, and my last two quotients and multiply them together. So let's look at this again. So we're going to find the LCM of 224 and 144. The method's exactly the same. Start with 224 and 144. I'm going to factor them. I'm going to divide them both by 2 to get to 112 and 72. Divide them both by 4 to get to 28 and 18. Divide them by 2 to get to 14 and 9. But this time, to find the LCM, I'm going to take my first column and my last row and multiply together. And the LCM, the least common multiple of 224 and 144, is 2016. Now there's also a slight alternative I can do to find the LCM. I can follow the exact same method I just used for the slide method. However, at the very end, if I take one of my original numbers for which I'm trying to find and multiply it by the last number in the opposite column, that last quotient, that will also give me the LCM. So let's take again this idea of using 224 and 144 to find the LCM. I use the slide method, get exactly where I just was. Now if I take 224 and multiply it by the last quotient in the next column, 9, 224 times 9 is 2016. Well, what if I used 144 and 14? That also would give me 2016. Now we can use the GCF and LCM to help us with fractions. We can use the GCF often to help us simplify fractions. And to do so, we just divide the numerator and denominator by the GCF. So say we want to simplify 16/40ths. We know the GCF of 16 and 40 is 8. And what we can do is divide both the numerator and denominator by 8. And now I have a simplified fraction of 2/5. Now with the LCM, I'm using that where I want to add and subtract fractions so that they stay in the simplest form at all times. For example, if I'm doing 3/4 plus 1/6, I can use 24 because I know I can multiply my denominators to create a common multiple, but my least common multiple is 12. So I'm going to change both of my fractions to have that least common multiple of 12. For 3/4, I need to multiply my numerator and denominator by 3. 4 times 3 gives me the 12. 3 times 3 gives me 9. For my second fraction, to get that common denominator, I need to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 2. Because 6 times 2 gives me 12, so 1 times 2 is 2. So with 3/4 plus 1/6, I'll replace them with that common denominator. So I'm going to be multiplying my numerator and denominator by 3 and then by 2. And it gives me 9/12 plus 2/12. I add my numerators and I get 11/12. And it's already simplified at this point.